This is David Evans. I'm with the Microsoft Customer and Market Research team. And I'm here today with Amanda Currell, who is Vice President of Insights at Kantar. And we're really excited to kind of talk about the journey that we've been on together to bring a more integrated viewpoint to optimizing campaign assets, this whole person analysis. Before I get into the details here, I just want to mention that there's a couple of things that come along with this video. One is that if you're attending the event live, Amanda and I will really look forward to talking with you on a live Q&A session, have a little bit of a dialogue there. And then also we have a white paper kind of accompanying this report with the ARF. And there's a lot more details in there that we'll be able to get to here. So I would mention that if you want to learn more. But let's fly over the thinking here in the hope that the best practices that we've been honing for ourselves are something that you can adopt at your own company. Okay, so the scenario is that we are working on optimizing branding assets, in this case, videos. This is something that you might call copy testing. And in this case, is then when we work with the media team, we conduct research with target customers in order to optimize them before they go to market. So when it's successful and it works well, then the research will often trigger another edit. And this leads to measurable increases in the reach and the viewability and the lead generation and all those goals that we track in market. We oftentimes also hear our producers say that the research lets them be more creative and be more empathic and take bigger risks. So they like to hear that too. So the assets that I was called upon to optimize, working with Amanda at Kantar and other agencies, was somewhat atypical. They weren't TV spots or campaign videos. They were from a newly created internal media studio, which was created to help rebrand the $11 billion Office 365 business to Microsoft 365. So the videos that we were working with had broader goals than immediate calls to action. They needed to romance the suite, modernize it for new users. We needed to connect with people on social media, but we also had to educate them and show thought leadership on how Microsoft 365 had so much more value than anything that we've made before. Well, connecting with people on a deeper level is something that I've thought and wrote and taught a lot about in my career. Since 2010, I've been working on this notion of user receptivity or receptivity to these offerings in my teaching at the University of Washington. And I pulled that together in a 2017 book. And the basic idea there is that, we all are familiar with the notion that attention is a very selective bottleneck among customers. And they use this to connect with things that are meaningful to them and filter out the noise. Well, this work, I just explored all of the remaining bottlenecks that humans have to achieve these same goals. And they include perception as a filtering device, emotion, right? Whether or not something was persuasive, people use their memories, short and long term, to decide what to encode for later. And then fundamentally, they also make these very selective choices on what they behaviorally act on or engage with habitually, and then talk to their peers in social settings. So it looks like people are built to filter, and that marketers like ourselves and the folks that I was supporting would not succeed if we focused only on attention. So survey technology, I knew, was making rapid advances in the ability at scale to measure this full spectrum, right, of non-conscious to conscious to behavioral responses. So I was really excited to operationalize this thinking I'd been doing. And that's kind of how I first came to Amanda and I said, look, I want to measure it all with these videos and get the whole person reaction. So with that, let me throw it over to Amanda.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. Let's start with how did we do it? So really from a starting point of an existing Kantar framework that is very much anchored in real world outcomes. We worked closely with David to push this much further. So acknowledging and balancing research rigor with the reality of the challenges that a video faces once it is live, research not operating in a silo. Those challenges that the video will face when it's live is not just a breakthrough for the brand, but also to persuade cognitively, motivate behaviorally, and prompt people to advocate socially. And we need to be able to do this all in a single scalable study. And that was exactly where we ended up. In terms of what the whole person framework, that spectrum is, we're essentially now assessing how customers react to videos in non-conscious ways, seen here on the left. Emotional engagement being understood from facial expressions that are captured real time through a respondent's webcam. Active involvement, which is a single question measure of sort of sit forward and sit back involvement, and a reaction time measure of cognition of positive associations. Moving to the middle of the slide, we're looking at conscious evaluation and branding, which is more in line with traditional copy testing methods and surveys, but then moving to behavioral and social themes on the right. So behavioral action in terms of choosing to watch another video or learn more about a certain topic, and social sharing in terms of willingness to share what they saw in the survey on their social media channels. Additionally, if Kantar has an applicable benchmark for the tested video types, we'll also look at the overall impact versus that benchmark, and as an additional layer of context. But given the breadth of the thinking, it's a framework that can be used for videos designed, for very unique purposes and placements beyond the usual sort of pre-roll and social placements. Things like, keynote speeches, short documentaries, and some of the other formats that David mentioned. So let's take a look at some of the applications of the whole person framework. Starting with some testing that was done to understand how Anthem videos for Office 365 and a competitor fared against one another. Microsoft here being shown with a blue diamond and the competitor being shown in gray. We learned here that Microsoft was doing well at persuading behavioral action, the second column from the right, but might not strongly make it through the attention bottleneck, the non-conscious engagement on the left. In essence, Microsoft was winning minds with this content, but the competitor was winning on attention and would therefore likely garner more views. I think interestingly, if we had focused only on conscious evaluation here shown in the middle, we'd have been blind to the other differences in the spectrum. Moving to another use case. So this was feature videos. And we found that all the videos, as you can see, were clustered together pretty much and largely competent on most metrics, but that one more edit was needed to improve the video for Outlook Mobile in blue to keep people engaged. From all of the whole person assessments that we've conducted, we do see a healthy amount of variation and similarity in the different areas of the whole person framework. And that gives us further confidence that this is a discriminating and practical approach that doesn't just give us the same sort of patterns of results every time. And David, over to you for another practical application of the framework.
Right, so we were starting to see this measurement spectrum work for us. And so we moved on to bigger questions. And this one, we had a video that was really showing just a feature in Teams, which is the ability to blur your background. There was a video that we were pretty excited about. It was unusual for us. We had recruited Professor Robert Kelly. This was the gentleman who famously, he was giving a talk on BBC, and his children, his toddler and his infant, both came in and interrupted him during the middle of the BBC interview, right? But in our version of the video, he suavely just sort of blurred the background and saved himself a little bit of embarrassment. And the group came to us and said, should we really lean in on something like this on social media? And try to, would this work with its social attract potential? Well, there again, I mean, just seeing really the elevated numbers as you can, the background blurs in green here. So it was very elevated in its emotional engagement that was showing on people's faces. It was also elevated in the social sharing. So we said, go for it. We think it would work. And we were later found out that this won in the category of made for social media from the New York Festivals of Advertising Awards. We were also happy that another video that we optimized also made a shortlist honor here. So we kept moving and tried to ask even tougher questions, like this one, Amanda.
Yeah, this was a relatively recent and very unique application of the whole person framework. And we were using it to identify which format of some modern workplace thought leadership videos worked better in both the US and the UK. So the formats were an informal interview, which is shown here in blue, or a product demo in green. Both were in a hosted format with guests who were industry experts. So in addition to the format, we also wanted to understand cross-cultural differences between the US and the UK, something near and dear to my heart. And to that end, we found in the US that the interview style worked better, particularly in terms of emotional engagement and social sharing. But in a particularly interesting cross-cultural twist, when we looked at the UK, we saw that the demos worked better, so shown here in green. The result of this really excitingly meant that these fed into a localization strategy, both in terms of future creative development for these videos, but also deployment of the video series.
Right, and something else to notice here is that the middle comparison of these two videos, and like all the applications we've shown, they tend to be very tightly clustered. When you ask people consciously on rating scales, is this relevant to you? Is it persuasive? On almost all of these studies, we eventually, Amanda and I started calling this the bow tie effect. And that is that they were largely statistically tied on those conscious measures of persuasion. And that really represented all of the measurement and copy testing we had been doing at Microsoft for some years. Had we kept doing that, we really would have been, as Amanda said, blind to the variability going on the non-conscious level on the left, as well as the social and behavioral level on the right. These two formats were by no means tied. And so by expanding out to the whole person spectrum, we were able to see what formerly we weren't really measuring. So yes, you know, in addition to really enabling, like I said, some risks in our videos and us to expand and connect deeper with people, we did do some tests to see if they predicted in-market performance. And those tests came back confirmatory. So when we rank ordered our feature videos, and we had about a dozen of them, when we rank ordered them in terms of what we would predict to work and not work on the whole person spectrum, they ended up predicting the actual viewership statistics in market, including both the number or the percent of audience members who watched a quarter of the video and the percent who watched 3/4 of the video. And so those were significant predictions of that out in the market. We heard from our producers that on a single video last year, the optimizations that we made based on this whole person analysis led to a 75% gain in brand recall, a 50% gain in message recall, and a 56% gain in purchase intent. And you see that, you know, that's kind of spanning that whole spectrum. Well, there was, you know, the wonderful thing about doing this, as I said, is not only could we have those kind of immediate gains, but also just really empathize better with our customers, take a broader view of them and their needs and their psychology, and then also really to learn deeper truths about how to make good video. So this is kind of a list of the things that we can talk about in the Q&A, but we really feel like the big takeaways we were able to apply across all of Microsoft branding video. You know, the pattern results is teaching us, you know, kind of these broader truths. But once again, it's also just helping research connect deeper with the creative producers that we were supporting. So that's the story we have to tell. Again, love to get your questions and have you take a look at our white paper. Amanda, thank you very much for the help with this.
Oh, thank you, David.